It was a big week for New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani and the progressive movement. 3 candidates he endorsed, 2 of them Democratic Socialists, won their Democratic primaries. Avelia Chevalier, Brad Lander, and Claire Valdez all cruised to victory over running campaigns that sharply criticized Israel's war in Gaza. Their victories underscore how the politics around Gaza have shifted inside parts of the Democratic Party since the 2024 election, including whether former Vice President Kamala Harris paid a political price for refusing to break with President Joe Biden over U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza. It is an argument our next guest says Democrats can no longer ignore. In his latest piece for Vanity Fair, award-winning author and journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates writes, quote, "For reasons moral, pragmatic, and perhaps mostly ancestral, the next black presidency will have to think bigger. A party that was deeply identified with destroying apartheid within its borders attempted to win by ignoring apartheid abroad. It did not work." I spoke with Ta-Nehisi Coates earlier. Here's what he said. Joining me now is award-winning author and journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates. He's currently a senior staff writer at Vanity Fair. He's also the author of the best-selling book, The Message. It's great to have you back on the show. When you see the results from this week's race, specifically here in New York, from candidates who called Israel's actions a genocide, do you see that as a potential turning point for the party? And your piece talks about how the DNC infamously refused to feature a Palestinian speaker in 2024. So I'm wondering how you reflect on that with what has happened this week and the through line between that moment and where we are today.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a turning point because, I mean, as you probably know, there was plenty of resistance put up from the infrastructure of the party at the very least. But I think it was Mayor Mamdani who said, what is a party if not its voters? And it's pretty clear where the voters are. And the voters had a turning point a long time ago. You know, what that says about the donor class, what that says about the actual architecture of the party, what that says about former DNC chairs and wise men, you know, who can tell. I will point out, Eamon, that it has never been the case that when you have major shifts in the party that it has been peaceful. In 1948, when the Democratic Party decided to add a civil rights plank to its agenda, it essentially destroyed the party for the next 20 years, and a new party came out of that. And so it is not particularly out of character, you know, that this would be a very, very fractious dispute.
So I think the question that many probably have right now is that what the Democratic Party is going through? Is it a reckoning in this moment around this single issue that is perhaps going to fracture the party, maybe weakening it ahead of a very important midterm or a very important presidential cycle in 2028? And I'm wondering if you got any insight into whether or not that might happen or if the party is willing to move in that direction.
I think it's going to be extremely, extremely hard for somebody to get through the 2028 Democratic primary and have even the same position that Kamala Harris had before, which was kind of, how can I, talk about this the least? I think that's going to be really hard. I think that's going to be really hard. I mean, New York City is not just, abnormal because of its size and because of its politics. I mean, it has also, the largest population of Jewish voters in the country. Brad Lander, he's a Jewish congressman in a district with, a number of Jewish voters, and that this resistance would begin there. I just think it's a statement. In fact, you'd expect it to be the other way, but it's not.
One of the things that you wrote about in your current piece for Vanity Fair was effectively the missed opportunity for the Democratic Party and specifically the Kamala Harris campaign during the DNC to try to follow in the footsteps of some of the organizers and, more importantly, some of the black women who have in so many ways shaped and moved the party in very specific times. You talk about how the patron saint of the DNC was Fannie Lou Hamer and the legacy that she and the shadow that she cast over the DNC and how the convention fell short of that. Can you elaborate on that and why you felt that was an important connection to make in that moment?
Yeah, I think the most disappointing aspect of the DNC is not, simply that in 2024 they didn't allow a Palestinian American speaker or an Arab American speaker to address the larger convention. The most disappointing thing is that they fell short of their own declared standards. Nobody forced them to decide to commemorate Fannie Lou Hamer, and the fact that this was, the 60th year of her, attempt, or 60th anniversary of her attempt to get an integrated delegation from Mississippi to appear at the convention. They decided to do that. And so I guess I just felt like I had a responsibility, as somebody who is, rooted in that same tradition, and as, a number of, though not all, of the Black women who I talked to who are also rooted in that same tradition, to ask, are you actually honoring who Fannie Lou Hamer was? Are you honoring the fact that she was not just somebody who was arguing for Black representation, but in fact was one of the first and earliest civil rights figures to oppose the Vietnam War? Are you honoring Coretta Scott King, who you hold up as a hero, and in fact was 3 years before Martin Luther King in saying, why is it that Lyndon B. Johnson has so much sympathy for Black kids in Alabama and so little sympathy for Vietnamese kids half a world away? Are we actually honoring that? And I think it's really important to say that and bring that forward.
As you are very well aware, there's now a divide that is growing a little bit within the Democratic Party between progressives and others. And a lot of that centers around the debate over Israel and American foreign policy towards Israel. Let me play for you what Democratic strategist James Carville had to say and get your thoughts to it about the candidates here in New York City. Take a listen.
I don't think that the congressional Democrats should seat her as a member of the Democratic Party. You can't kick her out of Congress. She was voted, but she doesn't have to be in a Democratic caucus. I don't have anything in common with Ms. Chevalier, and I really don't want to be in the same party she's in.
Your reaction to that, Ta-Nehisi?
Wow. You do this to me every time I come on an interview. Play something that leaves me completely speechless. Because look, the problem with that is, look, whatever you think of future Congresswoman Chevalier, she represents actual voters. Okay, she represents actual voters. And what James Carville is saying is that those voters should be disenfranchised. That he is so disgusted with whatever opinion she has that those voters should be disenfranchised. And I don't get it, man. That is a district filled with Black and brown people. They made their choice and he just doesn't respect it. You know what I mean? Which to me says, not so much, it's not so much a statement on Palestinians. It's not so much a statement on Israelis. It's not so much a statement on, anything that future Congresswoman Chevalier has said. It's a statement on how he feels about Black and brown people. And the fact that they are useful to him when they vote the way that he agrees with. When they don't, kick them out the party. They don't deserve representation. I'm trying not to say Jimmy for life. It's not good. It's not good, Eamon. It's not good.
It's not good. It's not good for democracy. Let me, if I can, maybe close out by asking you to kind of give us a gut check whether this is more than just a vibe check, right? I think there would be some critics who will say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, not that the central thesis of why Kamala Harris lost the campaign was because about Gaza, but Gaza was certainly a factor in the reason why she lost. What would you say to critics who say it was actually about inflation, it was about economics, it was about a lot of other things? Gaza was not something that pollsters came up with, pundits thought was an issue, and it might not be an issue going forward, that the party's fixation on this right now, as some Democrats are warning, is misguided.
Yeah, I can't really tell you that that's why she lost. I don't have, that data. I don't have those sorts of numbers. But I mean, to me, look, I know the headline was what the headline was, but I was less interested in that than asking the question of whether, in fact, someone who would not have been in that place if it was not for the Black freedom struggle, and I think this is actually not just true of Kamala Harris anymore, but in true of the Democratic Party itself, that it owes its very present existence to the Black freedom struggle. Is it actually honoring the core morality and principles of that struggle? And are we settling for an interpretation that says human rights, civil rights for certain people, and screw everybody else? Or was this supposed to be about something bigger? Was it, did human actually mean human? You know, and my argument is, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, in the words of Coretta Scott King, in the words of W.E.B. Du Bois, in the words of Martin Luther King, it was always supposed to be bigger. You know, if this is just interest group politics, I mean, I don't know what that is. Then I don't have a place in that party, and I don't have a place in that coalition myself.
All right, Ta-Nehisi Coates, it's great to see you as always. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, Eamon. Stop stunning me like that.